Hello, everybody. This is Teacher William, and welcome back to It's Always a Thin Line. And I want to take this moment to welcome you to Season 2. I know that Bossman and I have been missing in action, but the truth is that this podcast and our YouTube channel and so on and so forth are all side projects. We do have 9 to 5 jobs, and we've been busy working and taking care of our things in life. If you'd like to support our channel and maybe one day we can go full time, you can definitely support us through PayPal. The link is in the bio. If you're watching this on YouTube, the link is in the description. So, welcome to Season 2, and we hope you enjoy the episodes. And remember, it's always a thin line. From the confines of a prison cell to the stress of everyday life, it's been said we're all doing time. So remember, it's always a thin line. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to It's Always a Thin Line. I'm Teacher William. I'm on my own today. Boss man's at the gym getting yoked. If you listen to this podcast on YouTube, I'll be uploading some videos of him doing his rutinas. Be sure to check out that. And always check out his Instagram. You can get a link to his Instagram by checking out our Instagram at It's Always a Thin Line. So today's topic today, and I'm gonna tell a story about literacy, literacy, and literacy and death. How almost, how literacy almost got me killed. It's always a thin line in life, and I had no idea how close I was to death until I heard the story later on. So, just to give you a little background, I was born in El Salvador. I was adopted when I was 6 months old, and I lived at home until I was 11. Then I went to the group homes and eventually into prison pretty quickly. But while I was at home, my parents saw to it that I got the best education possible. My father's a teacher. My grandfather was a teacher. My grandmother was a teacher. My mom was a teacher or teacher's aide, something along those lines. I believe one of my sisters is a teacher, and I'm a teacher. So when I was young, one thing that my parents made me do is they made me read for like 15 minutes every day um, before school. I had a little corner. I don't know if I was able to choose the books, but I had books to read, and um, I had to read 15 minutes every day before school. So another thing, I want to give a shout out to my second grade teacher, Mr. Bukowski, for him teaching me how to write and penmanship. These two things would serve me very, very well in prison. And that's what today's story is about. So, fast forward, I'm in Solano Prison in Northern California. And I roll up and I meet a guy. I go into building 2 and I meet a guy, and we're going to call him Compton Willie. We're going to call him Compton Willie. And Compton Willie was a good guy. I actually lived in his cell twice. We were cellies twice. We could get along real well. We just couldn't live together. It was always an issue. But I liked him. He liked me. He was a good Christian brother. A little bit crazy, but definitely a good guy. And Compton Willie had a friend, and we're going to call him the Iceman. So Compton Willie and the Iceman, they had been friends forever, since I believe since they were kids. Um, Even before the Iceman hit the yard, I knew about him because Compton Willie had told me, many stories about him. So here's one story that I love that that Compton Willie told me. So they were in another prison, and they were cellies in another prison, and the Iceman had some stomach problems, right? So he had some stomach problems, and he went to the infirmary. And when he got back, Compton Willie told him, what they say, and the Iceman said, "Oh, they said, this is what I have," and they gave me the medicine. And Compton Willie, and for the record, if or not for the record, but if you're wondering why I call him Compton Willie, is because his name was Compton something else, and that's where he's from. And yeah, I just give the man his respect always. But anyways, so Compton Willie and the Iceman went about their way, and about 2 or 3 days later, they were in the cell, and the Iceman was on the top bunk, and Compton Willie was on the bottom bunk, and they were watching TV, and Compton Willie told the Iceman, "Hey, man, how you feeling?" And the Iceman told him, I feel all right. I guess I feel a little better. But he's like, man, the medicine tastes like shit. Compton Willie's like, what do you mean the medicine tastes like shit? He's like, man, it's nasty. You chew them up and they're just nasty. They taste really bad. Compton Willie's thinking, and he's like, man, let me see that medicine. So Iceman gave him the medicine. And Compton Willie looks at it and tells the Iceman, man, you dummy, these are suppositories. You're putting them in the wrong end. And so that story always cracked me up. And I asked the Iceman, I asked him if that story was true. And he didn't tell me directly it was true, but yeah, I believe it was true after having talked to the Iceman. So, anyways, so these two, they're two good guys. I mean, I know they're in prison. I know they committed a crime. I know, I get it. I'm not speaking on that. But for me, these were two good guys. So, anyways, literacy. Where does literacy come into this? Well, there's in prison, there's a lot of illiterate people. I mean, they can't read. They never learned how to read. And I remember the first time anyone ever, I was standing in my cell, and I believe it was a friend of Compton Willie, actually. And he came into my cell and he looked at me. He was a brother, and just for the record, brothers are the blacks, the brothers. That's at least that's what I called them inside. So he was a brother, and he came in the cell, and he kind of closed the door, and it kind of caught me off guard. I'm thinking, man, I don't have no beef with this guy, what, I'm about to get down or what? So he looked at me, and he actually asked me, he's like, hey, man, do you know how to read? And I thought it was a joke, but I didn't laugh because something about that moment told me it'd just be better not to laugh. So I told him, yeah, yeah, I know how to read. And he's like, hey, listen, my mom wrote me a letter. Could you read it to me, please? And I was just taken aback. I was truly humbled right then and there. Um, and I read it for him, and it was good news, and it was interesting. It was kind of a trip to read this letter and then watch this guy as he's reacting to the letter, like he's listening to a recording or something. When there was good news, he was smiling and pumping his fist, and when it was kind of sad news, he took a deep sigh. And it was a trip. It was an experience like no other. So anyways, long story short, I guess word got back to Compton Willie, and one day Compton Willie approached me and told me, hey, Mini Me. That's what he called me. That's what everybody in the cell block, even guards, called me, Mini Me. Right? So he told me, hey, Mini Me. He talked in this real rough, scruffy voice. And I got a letter. I need you to read it for me. I was like, all right, no problem. Right? So I read it for him. He's like, all right, here's a piece of paper, here's a pencil. I need you to write a response. So I said, okay, no problem. When I finished, he gave me two soups, and that was cool. And I was very happy with that. Inside, soups are like currency. Top ramen soups, I believe they're called ramen soups. They're money inside. So, anyways, um, Iceman hits the yard. Everything's great. One day, Iceman approaches me, and hey, yo, Compton Willie told me to approach you, and you know, uh, I got this letter from my mom. Can you read it for me? I told him, sure, no problem. And then he told me, hey, I read the letter, and then he told me, listen, I want to write a response. you know, can you do that? I said, of course I can do that. And I believe the first time he tried to pay me, but I told him don't worry about it because he's a good guy. He's a good guy. But nothing free is in prison. Nothing is free in prison, and some people don't even like accepting free things. So that was the only time he ever accepted that for free. So the next time he came to me, he had a letter from his wife, and that was cool. I wrote it back. I wrote a response for him, and time would go by, months go by, and then one day he brought me a letter. He's like, "Hey, I got a letter," and it was from a woman, and she was reading it, and I was like, "Oh, okay." So he has a girlfriend, right? And I wrote the response for him. Everything is great. Everything, life is great. So one day, one day, the Iceman comes to me and says, "Hey, I got some letters." And I was like, all right, no problem. So I read the letters. One was from his mom, the other one was from his sister, and the other one from his girlfriend. I was like, cool, no problem. He's like, hey, can you write some responses for me? Sure, no problem. Boom, boom. And he hooked me up that day. He gave me something nice. I forget what it was, but I remember walking away real happy, like, damn, that guy took care of me today. So, anyways, so I went and dropped the letters in the box, and that was it. And one day I'm walking through the day room. This is weeks past. Weeks have passed. I forgot I wrote the letters, everything. So I'm walking through the day room and I see Iceman approaching me. But Iceman don't look too happy, right? So he approached me and he looked at me and he tell me, "Hey, Mini Me." And I say, "What's up, Iceman? How you doing?" He's like, "I ask you, man, you do that on purpose?" And I just looked at him and I was like, "Yo, Iceman, I don't mean no disrespect, homie, but I don't understand what you're asking me." He's like, "Hey, man, that was real fucked up, man." And I was like, "Yo, listen, Iceman, with all due respect, homie, I don't know what you're really saying. I ain't got no beef with you. You always been cool with with me, and I got mad respect, homie. But on the real, dog, I don't know what you're saying." He's like, "Hey, man, you sent the letter from my girlfriend to my wife, and the letter from my wife to my girlfriend." Oh man, let me tell you guys something. Right there at that moment, I, I could still smell the poo poo that was in my pants at that moment. For real, I looked at him. At first I didn't know what to say. I had no idea what to say. So I just told him like, "Hey man, I believe I told him, look, I would never do that on purpose, and on my life, I swear I'm sorry. I give you back whatever you gave me, man. I'm really sorry, man. I would never in my life would I ever do that." And I remember he looked at me and I didn't want to look away, man, because I really thought me and this guy were going to rock and roll for real. Um, and he just looked at me real hard, man. And I just looked at him and I hope through my eyes I was able to tell him, "Yo, I would never do that on purpose." And he just looked at me and he was like, "All right, Mini Me, all right." And he walked away. And, that was that. I was like, man, I felt bad. And then, like, I approached him later on, and I said, "Hey, listen, Iceman, I'm really sorry that happened. I'll never do that again. I'm really," and he was just like, "Nah, it's all right, man. You should have heard the calls and stuff, man. It was just insane, man." And I was like, "All right." Man, I'm so sorry, man. For real. I told him, man, I really apologize. So fast forward a little bit more, and then I got the rest of the story. And the rest of the story went something like this. Compton Willie was in his cell, chilling. And then the Iceman went in and was like, "Yo, I think I'm going to take care of that little dude, Mini Me. And Compton Willie was like, "Whoa, whoa, what do you mean? Wait, what's up?" And he was like, "Yeah, man, that little player hating, little motherfucker, little player hating motherfucker. I'm gonna kill that little dude, man." And then Compton Willie was like, "Yo, what happened?" And he's like, "Man, he sent a letter from my girlfriend to my wife, and he sent the letter from my wife to my girlfriend." And Compton Willie said he was blown away. He was just as blown away that he was just like, "What?" But Compton Willie said that he told Iceman, like, "Look, you a grown man, homie. I got your back all day long. If this is the move you want to make, hey, you're gonna do what you're gonna do." Uh, but I don't think the little guy did that on purpose. He ain't got it in him like that. That's not what kind of guy he is. I know the guy real good, and he wouldn't do something like that. Not on purpose. I mean, he did do something like that, but he didn't do it on purpose. And the Iceman looked at him and was like, "Yeah, all right." And then he walked out. And when he walked out, that's when he walked into me. That's when he came and found me. So somewhere in the line, whether, thank God Compton Willie stuck up for me. And thank God I was the type of person that he wanted to stick up for me on the real. So um, I really appreciate that. So yeah, and then throughout, and if you're wondering, I went on to write many letters for the Iceman, and he would later joke with me and tell me, "Nah, I'm never giving you, letters from my girlfriend, and same days letters from my wife. And he would joke with me about that. And Compton Eddie used to mess with me, Ice Man gonna come get you, man. But it ended well. And not only would I go on to write many, many letters for the Iceman and for Compton Willie, but for a lot of guys in there. Uh, I wish I could say I taught somebody to read, but I never did. But I did read for a lot of people, and I wrote a lot of letters, and for me that was a real blessing. Um, and it was something that I didn't always charge. There were times where some guys would come up to me, and I knew they were worse off than me. I didn't have nothing, and they had less than nothing. So I used to just help them, um, the best I could. So anyhow, that's how literacy almost got me killed. Actually, I don't know, penmanship or whatever, but that's one of my to me that's one of my greatest stories. I mean, the thing is, I never knew how close I was to death. So I never knew that. I knew he was pissed, but I didn't know the guy was planning on shanking me, on killing me. Shank is when somebody stabs you. Um, Matter of fact, I would do 12 years in prison and never get shanked. I would come down to El Salvador and get stabbed 2 times and almost die down here. So, but that's another podcast, another story. So, thank you very much for tuning into this episode of It's Always a Thin Line. I truly appreciate it. We truly appreciate it. Please give us a like, give us a subscribe on YouTube. We're on Spotify. And we're on Instagram, as I mentioned earlier. So thank you again for the love. Thank you again for the support. Thank you for the comments. We really appreciate it. Again, if there's anything you want us to talk about specifically, please drop it in the comments. So until next time, always show love, always show respect, and remember, it's always a thin line. Peace.